Housing has performed relatively well against negative economic shocks in the past, but the unique conditions of a pandemic-induced economic slowdown may produce different challenges to those faced in the history books. First things first, this pandemic is bad. It's really bad. It's affecting our way of life on a global scale. Medically, biologically, psychologically, socially, environmentally, politically. We're living through history at the moment, and it's a bit scary. Now, I have no expertise on the virus, and I have nothing but admiration for those on the front lines battling this pandemic. But when it's all said and done, if history shows us anything, it's that we will get through this. Maybe not tomorrow or in a month's time, but we will get through this. With this in mind, I'm going to shine a light on the economic impact this virus is having in Australia, and more specifically, the economics of how this pandemic is likely to affect our residential housing market. Now, I'm quite cognizant as to how poorly a video like this can age, especially with the daily rate of change that we're seeing. But it's exactly in times like this where we need to buckle down, use our hearts to care for our loved ones, and use our heads to make the best possible decisions with our money moving forward. In the past few weeks, we've seen increased expectations of an Australian recession and a slowdown in business activity, and trillions of dollars wiped off the global stock markets. In light of this, as property researchers, we've been focused on the various effects that this will have on property prices moving forward. It's important to remember that housing is different to the stock market. It's an illiquid asset and a consumption good which is far less volatile and subject to decline than stocks. What we're seeing as of now, and what we're certain to see in the coming weeks, is property transaction numbers falling significantly. A reduction in transaction amounts means that either sellers aren't selling or buyers aren't buying, or a combination of both. The shortage of buyers means that properties are spending more time on the market. This, along with no open home inspections, means that sellers are holding off listing their properties for as long as possible. Unlike past economic crises where Australians were essentially forced to sell, the banks, in conjunction with the Australian government, are offering debt assistance measures curbing the need for sellers to sell their properties due to financial hardship. So, basically, fewer buyers and fewer sellers means the current property market is somewhat in a state of limbo, with the values of property remaining stable. Now, existing economic headwinds, including high household debt, do make the property market susceptible to a potential fall in demand. However, Australia does not have one property market, and a decline in demand will be brought about by the composition of the local workforce and the state of household finances. Some areas should fare well due to their economic diversity and range of income sources, i.e. reliance on health and other essential services. Other areas will be harder hit, namely those that are more reliant on lifestyle and tourism. Now, if the property market remains stable, this would not be the first time that it hasn't followed suit with the stock market. In 1987, the Black Monday market crash saw the Australian stock market lose approximately 23% of its value in a single day. Somewhat counterintuitively, this had a reverse effect on housing values, with the property market continuing to experience double-digit growth throughout that fall. By the early 1990s, however, the Australian recession, amidst fears that property prices were overinflated, did see values decline, but only by 4.4% from June 1989 to October 1990. People who purchased a property during that period and have held it until today have seen the Australian housing market grow by over 800%. I'll say that again, from 30 years ago until now, the Australian property market has grown by over 800%. This includes the economic impact of the global financial crisis in 2007-2008, when property prices fell by over 7.1%. This includes the recent lending changes which limited foreign and domestic investment, resulting in one of the largest and longest property market downturns since the early 1980s. This includes SARS and MERS and swine flu and bird flu and Ebola. One of the most difficult aspects of this event is that we don't have a direct comparison because this is worse than any pandemic that we've seen in living memory. What we can do though is use these past events as a guide for what to expect when we inevitably flatten the curve and start to make our way through this. So, crystal ball time. Where to from here? Well, as of today, the cumulative number of COVID-19 cases has doubled every 3 days and has continued to do so for the past 2 weeks. The government's increasingly strict measures don't seem to be stopping the virus's progress, so a 30-day plus lockdown seems inevitable. Sticking with the impact that this will have on property, this will mean no auctions, no open homes, no building and pest inspections or inspections of any type. Essentially, the market will stay still. Banks and other lenders are offering debt assistance in the case of hardship, small to medium business is receiving large tax breaks and employee incentives, and the welfare system has seen a considerable boost. And this is just the start. We're likely to see interest rates fall even lower, even more economic stimulus to be rolled out. The moment we turn the corner and seize control over the spread and treatment of this virus, there will be a big push for government to reopen non-essential services and start to ease back into normality. We'll see an increase in infrastructure spending on a federal, state and local government level. Current priority development areas will see building approvals fly through, as well as an increase in private funding, especially for those larger projects. This is the best measure the government has of stimulating the job market, and it's also a great driver for property growth. So, in summary, the coming months won't be easy, and from here, things are likely to get worse before they get better. But the Australian property market is very resilient to these sort of events, and for those investors who are willing to go against their instinct of fear and play the long game, history tells us that they'll be rewarded for doing so. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.